Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist. I own 52 units of real estate and help coach people to buy their first multifamily deal. So today I've been thinking about the real estate market and if a real estate crash is coming. So since I've been investing, since 2017 until probably today, I've been hearing about a real estate crash for the longest time. I remember when I bought in 2017, people would always tell me, hey, don't buy yet. The real estate market crashes every 10 years. Then 2018 came, and I heard the same thing. 2019, I heard the same thing. Bought real estate. 2020, that's when COVID happened. They said COVID would crash the market. It did the reverse because interest rates dropped and all the single family homes skyrocketed in value, and multifamily cap rates went down, which increased the value. So from 2020 to probably 2023, I would say, um, the market was doing well. And then in 2023, 24, probably 25, I would say the real estate market became a little bit more stagnant because interest rates are higher, 7%, I would say on average. And, prices of single family homes haven't really gone up, but they really haven't gone down. Multifamily, I would say has gone down a little bit in value because expenses are higher and rents have kind of, in my opinion, kind of stayed stagnant in at least California, in Oklahoma, and Alabama, right? So in California, I think rents have stayed stagnant. In Oklahoma, rents have stayed stagnant. In Alabama, rents have actually went down a little bit. So, if your rents are stagnant, but your expenses go up, your NOI goes down. If your interest rates are higher, your cap rates are higher, your value goes down. So it's a kind of a twofold way of lowering the value of your apartment. So with that, it's kind of interesting because like I know the real estate market's kind of in an awkward standstill right now. I feel like it's just kind of like on pause, waiting for the crash or waiting to see if interest rates, suddenly drop down to like 5% and then it would go up again. So I feel like it's kind of like this weird game of chicken, but I feel like it's shifting towards a buyer's market because I'm looking at single family homes in Huntsville, Alabama, and I see a lot more days on market. I'm reaching out to the properties that are days on market for at least 100 days plus, and I'm making a creative finance offer. And what I'm finding is a lot of these owners already got pitched creative financing offers because most likely they locked in a low interest rate if they bought during COVID, and their interest rates can be 3%, 4%. So they're being asked to take over the loan subject to and also do a seller carry second. So I'm not the first person to kind of pitch this deal to them. So it's quite interesting. And then in terms of so that's kind of single family. So I think in single family, um, especially in markets where they overbuilt new construction, like think about like Austin, Texas, Huntsville, Alabama, the people who are trying to sell homes that are maybe 3 years, 4 years, 5 years old are having a difficult time because why would I buy a 3-year-old home when I can buy a brand new home for 20K more, amortized over 30 years, and builders give you warranties, builders give you incentives. So why would I buy a 3-year-old home? My only incentive in getting a home that's older is if I assume an amazing interest rate loan and if I get seller carry second or a combination of the both, right? That's my only real incentive. So I think it's shifting towards a buyer's market. And, people predict that, at least on YouTube, that the housing market will crash about 25%. But one thing that kind of hit me, which I heard on One Rental at a Time, is well, if you think it's going to crash 25%, just offer 25% less now. And maybe some buyer will say yes. Maybe a buyer will be in a situation where they'll say yes. Or realistically, 99% will say no. But it just takes that 1% of saying yes to make the deal happen. So that's what I've kind of been doing. Like I just kind of been making offers for single family homes at least where it's if I'm gonna buy your loan with today's interest rates, I usually offer 25 to 40% less. I just want to assume the loan, low down payment, and then I'll buy the deal. So that only works if it's a distressed seller, not a seller who wants maximum money, right? Or a seller who doesn't mind doing a seller carry second. So to me, I'm like, well, just make offers that make sense for you. And I've always kind of had that mindset and that mentality. But if you're waiting for a 25% cash or crash, just offer 25% less now. And maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no. Or maybe they'll say no, but you follow up in like 3 to 6 months and they'll say yes in 3 to 6 months if they're more desperate, depending on their situation. So the same thing with like apartment complexes. So I'm kind of targeting that 5 to probably 30 unit range is kind of the sweet spot right now. And, they list it for like, on Zillow for like $2.1 million. And obviously, to make the deal work in terms of cash flow, in terms of debt service coverage ratio, you probably have to put 30 to 50% down. And I don't want to put 30 to 50% down because I like buying real estate because of leverage. If I can't leverage, I'd rather just dump that 50% down into stocks unless I could see a huge value add play where I could force a lot of appreciation. But if it's just buying turnkey apartments, I have to put 40, 50% down and I only cash flow, let's just call it, well, the cash on cash return is not going to be as great because, putting larger down payment, I'd rather just put that money into the stocks, which is more passive, if I'm being honest, and easier. And, right now I can't really benefit from the depreciation because I don't qualify as a real estate professional status. So that's kind of one thing that I've been thinking. So to me, I don't want to put that much down. So for me, I only want to buy apartments with the minimum down, which is 25%, and it needs to hit that debt service coverage ratio of greater than 1.25, and it needs to have a cash to cash return. So what does that mean? That means that my offer is going to be low. Like if they want 2.1 million, I'll take the NOI, and I assume 50% expenses to get the NOI, divide by an 8 cap if it's 8 cap market, and then my offer might be like 1.5, 1.6, which is $500,000 less than what they want. So, once again, it's a 30 to 40% discount that I'm offering today. And a lot of times they'll say no, right? Because they want their $2.1 million and they're waiting to see if someone would put a large down payment. Maybe they can find a 1031 exchange buyer. Maybe they can find someone who puts a large down payment because they just want the tax benefits of owning apartments. But that's not me, right? I'm not that type of buyer. So I'll make an offer that's 30 to 40% less on apartments, or I'll give them their price, but I want creative financing. So creative financing will be, I'll assume their loan, or I'll do a seller carry second, right? Or if they're willing to do 50-40-10, I have a lender that can come in at 50% at 9% interest. If they're willing to seller carry 40%, I typically ask for 1%. I'll put 10% down. Or if they own it free and clear, I'll put 10% down and give them, 4 to 5% interest only on the deal, right? So my lowest offer is always the conventional lender, where I put 25% down. My higher offer is the 50-40-10. So I put 10% down. They do a seller carry second of 40%. And then my highest offer is always going to be I put 10% down. They do a seller carry of 90%. That's assuming it's owned free and clear. So I do this 3 offer method for apartments. And as you can see from both apartments and single family homes, I'm asking at least 30 to 40% off out the gate, right? So for me, I'm not waiting for the crash. I'm just making an offer that makes sense for me, which ends up being 30 to 40% less. So why I want to share this video is, it is discouraging to make offers and always get rejected. But if you get one buyer to say yes, you have a deal. And oftentimes, I know they're not going to accept my offer out the gate. But if I constantly follow up, if I'm constantly persistent and I'm constantly in their ear, maybe they'll be open to changing their mind, right? Because the market has to beat the sellers up. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of these sellers, they do get someone who was willing to put 50% down. They do get someone doing 1031 exchange, but I'm not that buyer. So for me, I just make my offers that make sense for me, and then I throw it out there and I follow up. And like I said, 99% of the time they'll say no. But that's kind of been my mentality. And like regardless of the market, right? If it's a hot market, if you're expecting a crash, I make offers that make sense for me and only me. So, and hopefully it makes sense for the seller. If so, then we have a deal. So to me, I don't know when the crash is going to come. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I already make offers that just make sense for me, which is usually 30% less than what they want. So to me, there's no difference, right? Like it's just cash flow numbers and having a buy box that makes sense for me. And my buy box makes sense regardless if it's a crash or not. Obviously, if interest rates are lower, I can make a more aggressive offer. Versus if interest rates are 7%, my offer's lower. If interest rates 3%, my offer's better. Because I just want the cash flow. And I want offers that make sense for me day one. I want cash flow day one, and I want the ability to do value add where I could renovate some units and raise the rents. So, you know, knowing how strict my criteria is, 99% of the sellers will say no. But it's just being persistent in the game. And I get it. I get discouraged, right? Like I submitted like at least 20 offers in the past week, and I got no responses to all of them. It's discouraging, but maybe when they feel more pain, maybe they'll change their mind. And at that point, that's when I come in. And that's when, like, I know I'm not the first option, but I am a option. That's for sure an option. So, it's kind of like the second, third choice, right? I'm not the first choice. But, like I said, they've been saying, if you watch all the Crash Bro videos, they've been calling for a real estate crash. And then once a crash happens, they're like, oh, don't catch a falling knife. But I just said, like I said, just buy deals that make sense for you. Right now, that cash flow day one, and you have the ability to do some value add, you can't lose, right? You can't lose because your number of sellers that'll say yes to your deal is very little. So you want to buy like home run deals. Like you want to buy deals of the century. You want to buy deals of the decade. And you just need one or two of these to make it happen. So, make consistent offers, follow up, give multiple offers, traditional financing, creative financing, talk to lenders. Local community banks in Oklahoma, for example, I can talk to them and say, hey, if you have a deal, let me know. Keep me in mind, because I feel like a lot of lenders are just waiting around. A lot of banks are just waiting around to see what the federal government do, to see if they lower interest rates or not lower interest rates. It's just a weird game of chicken. So get comfortable with making offers that are 30 to 40% less than what the listing price is, because it has to make sense for you and only you, right? And hopefully if the seller agrees, then you have a deal. So anyways, just kind of want to share my thoughts on the real estate crash and how my strategy hasn't really changed. I'm already making offers 30, 40% less than what they want because it has to make sense for me. And I'll continue to do so, right? Regardless if it's a crash or regardless if it's not a crash or a hot market. So, hopefully this inspires you. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. If you want one-on-one mentorship and coaching, click on my link tree down below. From there, you can see a link to my course, my coaching. From there, you can also send me an email as well if you want a discount code or you have questions. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe. I hope to see you next one. Thank you so much.